What's up? Getting ready for this week's call, and I want to say thank you guys for joining in and taking last call with Elliot on Sunday as I was traveling. So this week's call is still working on boundaries, and we're talking about vices. Just as a curiosity, like vices, right? Like this is such a negative connotation to it. And so I want to make sure that we all define it in the same way. The actual definition of a vice is this moral fault or weakness that in someone's character. And that has complete negative connotation to it. That these are bad characteristics. This is a thing that's not helping. This is a problem. This is an addiction. This is those things. I don't really look at it that way. Because of the other things I believe, that nothing's inherently good, nothing's inherently evil. There aren't actions per se that are always bad and actions per se that are always good. So I think it's a matter of our own awareness of what we're doing with this time and what we're doing with our actions that really makes the big difference. And us being able to have an awareness of what our vices are. So I want to define a vice as the thing I lean on, a tool, right? These are my vices, and perhaps your vices, more historically to you could be more of a negative thing, right? Like whether that's alcohol or whether that's weed or whether that's porn or whether that's death scrolling or whether that's, distracting yourself from your goals in any way that you're doing it. If it is getting too stoned, if it's sitting on the couch, if it's food, if it's any of the stuff that you're doing, like have some awareness and start trying to figure out what are the vices that you have and how are you using them. When we were down in Costa Rica for ayahuasca, one of the really eye-opening statements, people kept asking these questions to the shaman and people facilitating was, is alcohol okay? Is weed okay? Is cocaine okay? Like whatever these things were people were asking. What about MDMA? And since we're at a facility for ayahuasca, right, like a lot of the questions are drug-based. And what it came down to is the awareness. Am I using this to connect or disconnect? And so those become very important things. Let's use, marijuana, for example. I can very easily use this and get super fucking baked all day and then not look at my responsibilities and not look at the things that I'm trying to get done during the day. Or I can use this tool to help me with focus because of my own ADHD and how I have had experience now with this chemical and how it works for me and how I use it as a supplementation for performance enhancement. There is a difference. There's a difference in the intention of why I'm doing it. We don't really drink, right? So this time in the evening to kind of slow down, unwind, become really present, and be with each other, Bonnie and I prefer to get a little stoned and watch TV and chat. And so that becomes a tool for connection. Being able to manage that is going to have to be something you figure out. So some questions we'll have at the end of this that I want you guys to look into and think about for yourselves, and we can discuss on the next call. This one will be a little bit of a short one as the lecture's not that complicated. I'd really want to dive more into this in person over the call and talk about it. Like, what are your vices? Be honest with this. This is a really important part of the total accountability, is that if you're not going to be honest with yourself of why you're doing a thing, and even more importantly, maybe try to figure out, when did you start? When did you start using this tool to disconnect from what you were doing? I think it's important that you continue to choose the actions that are aligning with this better self, with this best self that we're trying to create with our goals. And what does our best self do? For me, my best self isn't owned by anything. My best self isn't owned by these vices. My best self uses these vices as, celebration of life, right? Like, I like being a little bit more on the edge and a little bit more out there. And so that allows me to kind of feel that. It helps me feel a little bit more of that motherfucker in me. Whatever that is. At least have the awareness of that's one of the reasons you like doing it. I want to figure out the best way to control my machine and my output in my direction as I possibly can. So figuring out how to manage those tools, those vices, those habits, whatever we want to call it, is going to be on us. And that's still the accountability that's come with this group from jump. It's always on us. We're going to have to be fully accountable to everything we choose and everything that we allow in our lives. So everything can be a tool or everything can be a vice. And that's masturbation, that's weed, alcohol, sex, food, caffeine, training, online dating, Instagram, the internet, scrolling, right? And you can use that stuff in either way. You know, having a drink with dinner, if that's something you're capable of, to connect with friends and enjoy a product and be in, you know, have taste and elevate the experience that you're currently in, I support. But if you're drinking or you're jerking off or you're scrolling online dating to fill some void and disconnect from something else that you should be doing that's actually in line with your goals, then it's a fucking problem. And it's going to be on you to figure that out. And you can't point the finger at anyone else and say like, well, you know, my family has these snacks around the house, or whatever it is. Like, all the excuses are shit. They're all going to be shit. And so figuring out why you do this. What are you trying to find with it? Is it just quick dopamine? Is it just the tingly sensation of being on the hunt? Because, man, I get that way. You know, I get that way. I know, you know, porn for me has been a dangerous one over the years that it's taken a long time to have a okay relationship with. You know, porn could be something I do all day and jerk off and not get anything done and just disconnect and don't have time for my partner. Or, you know, this is something, if we both are into it, right, that we can use to enhance our relationship. This is something we can do for fun. This is something we can look at as inspiration, more or less, for better ways we bang. It itself isn't good or bad. The use of the tool becomes the real side, you know, the real point of the argument. How are you using it? I don't believe there's the good or bad inherently in it. Doing something doesn't make you a good or bad person. Fuck, even killing people, right? Like, how many people do we know, you know, within our group here that have military background that have probably put people in the ground? Would I say that that's right or wrong? Well, I would say it depends on the circumstance. I would say it depends on the use, or not use, but, you know, circumstance, or what. There's just more to it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And being able to look at that and decide, was that aligned with the goals you're trying to accomplish, or is it not? And if it isn't, we need to do something about it. That's slowing us down. That's fucking up our progress. It's getting in the way. It's time that we are choosing right now to give to something else. And these vices can quickly fucking own us, even out of habit. A few months back, I gave up porn for 2 months. And yeah, I would still catch myself, like, out of boredom going to Reddit or something like this. And I realized what I do is I'm typically bummed out by the news, and I don't always want to just scroll Instagram for the sake of Instagram, so I would scroll other stuff. And porn's never put me in a bad mood, nor does it really take a lot of brain power, right, to look at boobs or whatever it is that you're looking at. But I noticed that, and that's time I could be spending either being still, that's time that I could spend either working on things, because I'll quickly lose to it. And even the hunt and the search, the dopamine that comes from doing that, I know how dangerous that is for me, that I'll just spend this time scrolling and searching and looking and not actually accomplishing shit. You know, just mentally masturbating and procrastinating through my day and using that vice, not even using it, right? This is it using me. This is now, I've handed the fucking keys over to it, almost getting toward the state of addiction. Addiction to me is when one of these tools or vices has become such a prevalent force in my life that I can't manage my responsibilities because of it. that I can't do the things that I'm supposed to do. I can't show up for my kids. I can't get to work on time. I'm drinking at work. Any of these things, right? Like if one of your vices is jeopardizing your goals, then it's a fucking problem. And if you can't stop it, that's an addiction. If you can't moderate it, if you can't manage it, if you can't have a healthy relationship with it, then it needs to go. And don't look at it as something like, well, other people can do this, I can't. Fuck all that. You've got to be accountable to you and say the way I work means I can't do this. I can't manage it. I can't be around it. And all those things are varying degrees that you have to have awareness of and make those decisions for yourself. But being accountable is you making those decisions and you managing it. You figuring out how the best case scenario for you to reach your goals goes with this tool or without this tool. With this thing in your life or without this thing in your life, with these people in your life or without these people in your life. All of this is going to be on you. You can't skip it. You have to have awareness of it. Otherwise, you'll just fill your life with holding on to more and more bullshit that you used to do that isn't helping you anymore. And change is uncomfortable. New habits to create are uncomfortable. They're hard. It's really hard to put in a new habit and overwrite the old code that's inside of us that's been driving for so very long. Yeah, I wrote, are these working for you? Or are they controlling you? And that can go for working out. It can go for diet. It can go for any of these things. That if you let it get too out of hand, that you're no longer at the wheel, then it needs to be addressed. Not Dead Yet Life is about you being at the fucking wheel, you taking control, and you not allowing any of this other bullshit to make votes for you in your life. If porn makes a vote for you, if alcohol makes a vote for you, if any of these things that aren't aligned with the best self that you're trying to create isn't what you want, then you have to change it. No one else in your life is going to be responsible to this. Not your friends, not your family, not anyone else. Only you. And you've got to figure out where that line is and if it's acceptable for what you want to do. I'm not here to tell you don't fucking do this. I'm not here to tell you you can't do this. But I'm telling you, if you can't manage it, fucking hit the brakes. And stop it. And have the awareness first and foremost of why am I doing it? So some questions I want you guys to think about. How would you define addiction? You know, for me, I haven't had any problems with alcohol or drugs to where I've ruined relationships or fucked stuff up. And I know we've got people in the group who've, you know, had deeper problems and have become sober. Body for one. How would you define addiction? How does that look in your life to you? Like I said, for me, it's whenever I realize something has gained control and I'm no longer able to moderate the use of it. It's whenever I'm starting to fuck up my responsibilities and I'm starting to skip out on the progress I want to make because something else has too strong of a pull for me that isn't toward what I've decided my best self wants. Am I using this to distract? Am I using this to disconnect or connect? Because if I'm using it to connect to inspiration, to connect to creativity, to connect to my chick, connect to, elevate an experience in the moment we're in with friends, all of these things are worth noting instead of, to go to that, like I can't go to that thing without getting fucked up. That's probably not a place you need to be. That for me was how I looked at drinking years ago. And I really don't do it anymore because that's what I was doing it. I was doing it to disconnect from really being too involved in a place I didn't want to be. And for me, sad as it is, it's family gatherings. It was just being around a people I wasn't a ton aligned with for whatever reason. The conversations weren't interesting and I felt surrounded by people bitching. And I don't want to bitch. I don't want to do that. That's a vice. Is complaining one of your vices? Has it become such a standard thing that even the cynical part of you takes over? Like, have awareness of that vice and how you're using it. Is it to blow off steam? Is it to get the dopamine check or let yourself off the hook? How are you using it? There's a difference in sharing frustration with people and you're making progress, but lots of people just bitch and complain because that's what they bond over. And they trauma bond and they connect and do all this shit over negative stuff, which lowers your frequency and lowers your best self to just being dug into more bullshit that isn't what you really want in your life. And you want happiness and you want success and you want progress. And none of those things are going to align with it. None of those things that distract you from that are going to align with it. None of those things that you need to get through it are going to align with that. So setting boundaries around these is tricky, right? Because there's two types. There are two types of vices that we're going to look at. We're either going to have ones that we can manage and moderate, or ones we can't. The ones we can't, they need to go. So whatever you need to do with that to get those out of your life, get that distraction out of there, they've got to go. That may mean people, that may mean situations, it may mean circumstance. Hell, it may even be job or any of these other type of things. You know, it's why are you doing it? Because if we don't see that, if we don't see the roots of it, we can't figure out how to get around it. We can't figure out why it owns us. And if we can't figure that out, then it just has to be gone. It has to be cold turkey, and we have to look at that as it's fucking poison for us, and our system will not operate with it. We're not weak. This isn't a judgment thing. Let the fuck go of that. Quit having some judgment of anything that you do. It is simply one of two things. Does it align with what you want, or does it not? And if it does not, we got to get rid of it. We have to cut it out. You know, if you can't go out and have one drink, if you can't manage things, if you end up smoking all day, if you get, too addicted to sex or porn or online dating or online shopping or any of these things, it's going to become a problem. They're going to eat up time in your life, and that's the only thing that we have that's really fucking valuable is our time. That's what everything in this group is about, is making the most of that time in the weeks ahead of us and building the exact life we want, operating as our best self every day to the best ability that we can. And some things got to go. That's letting go of the old you. That's letting go of old bullshit. That's letting go of your old shit that's not helping. Good example of this would have been like talking with Brant. Brant was saying that, one of his things is video games. He's just been into it forever, loves it, and has a real identity. Also now realizes he played video games a lot because he grew up in a hectic household, and that was a way to just lock in. And so he'll find himself doing it in times of stress instead of when he should actually figure out the solution. So that's one way to operate it. And so he's cut it out of his life. That he needs to make the boundary and say, I don't need it. I don't need this to go forward. I don't need this to be happy. I don't give this thing a vote. It doesn't get to decide how I spend my time. I choose how I spend my time. I get to be intentional with my time. And if it's not aligned, it's got to fucking go. But that's for you to have the awareness of, is that action aligned with the best self that you want to create? Is that creating the happiest, the most loving, the one that is most intimate with their friends, the one that's present, the one that's involved? Is it creating that person, or is it not? So cut some shit out. Eliminate some stuff. It's not always adding more is going to be the helpful thing. The other side of this are the ones that we have to moderate. The ones that can be beneficial. And whether that's bullshit food and snacks or weed or sex or anything else we've talked about here. What's the ideal that you're using there, right? Like, this is pre-workout. These are any of these things and have to be addressed. There's a point where too much is a fucking problem. But there's a point where there's a right amount. And that's some experimentation that you're going to have to find. Sometimes you overshoot it. Sometimes you have to set some stricter boundaries. You know, for a long time with weed, I set a boundary that I didn't smoke until after my work was done and I was home in the evening. Because otherwise I didn't have the ability to manage it on the front end. Now that I've spent more time, I can. And I don't look at it as that tool. Or I don't look at it as a disconnect. I look at it as more to go inward and communicate with myself and have a deeper awareness and a connection. That's been really valuable to me. Using it to fuck off and not look at my problems isn't good. So that's how you have to manage those type of things. And if you set boundaries like I did with, we only do this in the evening, or food, right? That I'm going to eat fuel that's really healthy for me and good for my goals and my body and allows my body function and training and health to be the priority. And when we have something to celebrate, I'll fucking celebrate and do it without guilt. And it makes it more special because we're not always doing it. We're not always having fucking cake every night. That makes cake not special. You know, do it when it matters. Do it when it creates a memory. Do it when it's an experience. That's when you get to use those tools for something special. And this can go for anything in your life. There isn't anything that's going to be off limits that can be a vice and a problem for you, but you have to have that awareness. You know, is there something that you can replace that time that you're disconnecting with something that's a better habit to get us where we want to go? Is there something you can do that's more useful to you that starts doing the other things that are positive habit stackings, like being outside, being on a walk, journaling, doing the awareness work, reading a new material, experiencing things with new people, and even just being still. Just sitting still. Like, how well can we do that? So as you're going into this, be very, very careful and remove any of the bullshit judgment about these vices of being inherently right or wrong, whether that's due to morality or your religion you grow up in or what your parents think or what your friends do. Hell, a lot of the stuff, even starting to eat healthy, people treat like that's some type of fucking weird move that you're making. That you have to explain why you're eating in a way that's actually beneficial to your body instead of eating processed bullshit. Instead of overeating every fucking meal. And you know, that if you start exercising, people take that as some type of fucking personal attack. Now, if exercising becomes such a fucking problem in your life that you're not able to do everything else, that needs to be looked at. So as I end on this, right, like our big things I want to focus on. What are your vices? Fucking list them out and be honest with yourself. What do you use to disconnect? And can it be used in the other way to connect instead? How do you define addiction? So you know where that line is. So you know where there's a problem to say like, that's getting toward that, we need to fucking stop. We need to change our decisions, we need to take action now. Have the awareness to be able to do that on the fly and know what the fuck you're doing. Catch yourself in it like, oh fuck, I'm doing it. Because so much of it's going to be habit. And so much of it just gets built into the autopilot that if we're not aware, we'll just start doing it. So answer those questions, and I want to hear what you guys have to say. Like, what is getting that vote in your life? What aren't you fully in control of? What vices do you want to manage more, and what boundaries could you set to be better around it? When's the last time that you did try to set a boundary on something that you do every day that you don't think's a vice, but how are you without it? Are you still okay? Are you better, worse, the same? All this is the experiment to figure out how you operate your best and create the life that you want. What does that look like? You don't fucking have to explain it to anyone else. No one else can do this for you. No one else can set these boundaries. Not your friends, not your family. They don't have to change. Being accountable means that you change and what they're doing isn't a fucking threat. Now, if you can't go do things without this vice, then maybe those aren't things you need to be doing. And have that awareness too, to hold that fucking line and standard to yourself. That this is an unhealthy practice for me, I have to stop doing it. That's on you to decide. Every fucking day. What's the most valuable thing to you? Alright, so we'll dive into that this week on the call. Thank you guys. I like these short, kind of put together quick topics. What are your vices? Let's dive in. How can we help? How can we sort that out? How can we acknowledge it first and have honesty about it? Because through that allows you to deal with it. If I can't look at it and talk about it, if I can't journal about it, if I can't be honest with myself, I'm not going to be able to take actions to change it. You know, do you have any vices you fucking hide from people? That's another one. Whether that's flirting or bullshit or online, or what are you hiding from other people in your life? Like, is there something you've got that you wouldn't want other people to know that you do? Because if there is, let's address that too. So let's dive into this shit and we'll talk Sunday. All right. Thank you guys for being part of the call. I will see you next week.